Are dips bad for your rotator cuffs? Look, the first thing we need to define is what is the rotator cuff. Most people are very ignorant when it comes to these terms. People say the dips are bad for the rotator cuff. Well, what is the rotator cuff? Because most people view the rotator cuff as some sort of imaginary group of muscles, or maybe they're tendons and ligaments, and you work them stability-wise with dumbbells, but you don't work them with barbells. Look, the rotator cuff includes the bicep, the tricep, the pec, the front delt, the teres minor, the teres major, the infraspinatus, the supraspinatus, the lat, the trap. I didn't even name all of them. That's like 50% of them. So it's every muscle that attaches somewhere in the shoulder girdle. So when we're saying it's bad for the rotator cuff, we're going to have to get a lot more specific. Because, a lat pullover might be bad for my lats, which connect to the rotator cuff. I wouldn't really consider that a rotator cuff injury if I hurt my lat. Same thing as I wouldn't, if I pulled my bicep, I wouldn't really consider that a rotator cuff injury. So what exactly does that mean? Are we talking about more tight-knit muscles to the rotator cuff, like the front delt, like the side delt, like the rear delt? Maybe, dips could be problematic for those. But even if that's the case, let's even admit that dips could be problematic for some of the muscles in the rotator cuff, as vague as that is. Really, any exercise could be problematic depending on how you're doing it, the intensity you're doing it, the form you're doing it. The deadlifts for a lot of people are a phenomenal exercise that builds strength, that builds muscle, that builds explosiveness. Depends on how you're doing it, though. Dips, if you're doing a full range of motion, and a lot of people are going to argue with me on this and say full range of motion is the dangerous part. I think it's the opposite, because the people that are getting hurt on dips, in my opinion, I don't have any statistics to back this up, but those are the people that are doing not even going to 90 degrees at the elbow joint. They're doing a lot of weight. They're doing their body weight, or they're doing 45, 90, 135 pounds below their waist. And it's just like, that is the dangerous part. It's not the guy that has 50 pounds of assistance that has impeccable form and is getting very deep ranges of motion. I don't think that's bad for the rotator cuff. What I think is bad is when you've got a lot of weight and you go 2 degrees too low. If you're always consistently doing your sets very low, getting a full range of motion going as low as you can within comfortable reason, those aren't the guys that get injured. They're used to those deep ranges of motion for their chest, for their front delt. The guys that get injured are the guys that only stretch their pec halfway and then accidentally, because there's a lot of weight, go a little bit too deep and then they tear their pec. So I just think the whole discussion about rotator cuff, about dips, about safety, it's so complex. And if anyone says they're bad, they're good. Are the deadlifts bad or good for your posterior chain? It's like, well, the posterior chain is your trap, your erectors, a little bit of your lats, your glutes, your hammies, it's like there's so many different muscles in there. It depends on how you're doing the deadlift, depends on your form, intensity, etc. Very complex question, but I would say overall dips are a fine exercise.